Tonight, the world outside is quiet. Snow is gathering softly on rooftops, trees, and windowsills, turning everything into a peaceful winter painting. You've wrapped yourself in a warm blanket, the lights are dim, and your breathing is beginning to slow. As you settle in, allow yourself to wander, back to a time when winter nights felt mysterious, when Christmas held small secrets, when you wondered if something magical might be hiding in the forest behind your childhood home. Tonight, I'll take you there, to that quiet place where the boundary between the ordinary world and the enchanted one grows thin, where lanterns glow without flame, where Christmas gnomes and elves walk beneath ancient pine trees, where the snow itself remembers your name. So, take a deep breath. Let your shoulders soften, and let us begin this gentle journey into a magical Christmas night. There was a Christmas long ago, in a small mountain village where winters came early and lasted late. The houses were wooden and warm, their chimneys sending threads of smoke into the crisp sky. And on the northern edge of the village, where the last row of cottages gave way to forest, there lived someone named Elin. Elin's home was modest but full of warmth. Pine branches hung above the windows, dried orange slices spun slowly in the breeze, and the scent of cinnamon always seemed to linger in the corners. Every Christmas, Elin decorated the house with soft golden lights that glowed through the snow like tiny guiding stars. But the thing Elin loved most was Winter Hollow, a winding little path leading into the forest. It was said that the path was older than the village itself, and that if you walked it on the right night, at the right hour, you might find magic waiting for you. Most villagers believed the stories were just that, stories. But Elin had always sensed something different in the woods during December. Sometimes the snowflakes seemed to fall in patterns. Sometimes a warm breeze would pass through the trees, even in deep winter. Sometimes she heard tiny bells, quick, delicate chimes that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. And on this particular Christmas Eve, as the world settled into a deep hush, Elin felt something in her heart tug gently toward Winter Hollow. As dusk melted into night, Elin wrapped herself in a thick wool cloak, pulled on her boots, and stepped outside. Snow drifted lazily from the sky in soft spirals, catching the glow of cottage windows. The whole village was quiet. Everyone else was indoors, preparing sweets, sharing stories, or drifting toward sleep. But Elin felt awake in a way she hadn't felt since childhood. She followed the familiar path toward the forest. And as she reached the first line of trees, something unusual caught her eye. Hanging from a low branch just above her head was a lantern she had never seen before. It was small and round, made of frosted glass etched with tiny swirling patterns, like vines or runes or snowflakes captured mid-fall. Inside, instead of flame, a soft bluish light pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. Elin approached cautiously. When she lifted a hand toward it, the lantern brightened, then dimmed again, as though acknowledging her presence. A strange warmth fluttered in her chest. This was not a villager's lantern. No human hand had made this. Something magical was stirring in Winter Hollow tonight. With a slow breath, Elin reached out and lifted the lantern from the branch. The moment her fingers touched it, the forest around her shifted. The trees seemed taller, older. The air felt warmer, filled with a subtle shimmer. And somewhere deeper in the forest, She heard soft footsteps and laughter. Not human laughter. Tiny laughter. Joyful and bell-like. Elin took a step forward, lantern in hand. The light glowed brighter, illuminating the snowy path with a soothing blue-white aura. What am I walking into? She thought. But her heart felt strangely calm, almost guided, like she'd been expected. And she followed the light deeper into the woods. A few minutes into the walk, Elin noticed something astonishing. The snow on the ground was glowing. Not brightly, but faintly. Each footprint she left behind lit up for a moment like a pressed star before fading. She continued forward, mesmerized. And then she saw them. 3 tiny figures standing on a fallen log, each no taller than her knee, with round red hats that bobbed in the breeze, thick woolen beards that curled slightly at the ends, and little boots dusted with frost. Christmas gnomes. Nisa, some villagers called them. Tomten, others. Guardians of forest magic. Beings people whispered about but never truly expected to see. Their eyes were bright and curious, like embers glowing in the night. One stepped forward. He held a little walking stick decorated with holly leaves, and he squinted up at her through the falling snow. "Well then," he said in a surprisingly gentle voice. "Looks like the lantern has chosen." Aelin blinked. "You can talk?" "Of course we can talk," another gnome said, arms crossed. "We simply choose not to, especially when humans stomp around frightening the squirrels." The first gnome elbowed him. "Be kind. She's here because she's meant to be." Elin tried to speak, but her breath had nearly left her. "We've been waiting for someone," the first gnome continued. "For someone who can see the magic without fear. Someone whose heart still remembers the truth of winter." "And what truth is that?" Elin whispered. "That Christmas," the gnome said softly, "is not just a holiday. It's a season of crossing paths, between light and dark, between old and new, between human and magical." He pointed at the lantern in Elin's hand. "And tonight, Winter Hollow needs your help." The gnomes led Elin deeper into the forest. The trees grew thicker, the air warmer and filled with glimmering sparkles, like frozen fireflies suspended mid-air. At last, they reached a clearing Elin had never seen before, though she'd walked this forest many times. In the center stood a great pine tree, taller than any she had ever known, its branches silver and shimmering like polished starlight. But something was wrong. The roots were coated in a thick layer of dark frost, sharp, unnatural, creeping upward like frozen claws. The gnomes looked somber. "This frost does not belong to our world," said the first gnome. "It has no warmth, no kindness. It comes from a place without songs, without stories." Elin knelt beside the frost. A chill cut through her gloves. It felt empty, hollow, unlike any winter cold she had felt before. "How do we stop it?" she whispered. All 3 gnomes looked at the lantern she carried. "The lantern is the last light of the old magic," the smallest gnome said. "It chooses only once every few decades. It chose you, and with it, you may bring warmth back to the forest." Elin held the lantern closer to her chest. "But I'm not magical." The first gnome shook his head. "Magic isn't about talent. It's about heart. And you have more of it than you know." The gnomes guided her to the base of the great pine. "Hold the lantern to the frost," they instructed. "And whatever memories rise in you, let them." Elin hesitated, but then she lifted the lantern. The blue light brightened, warmed, shifted to gold, and suddenly, memories flooded her. Her childhood home at Christmas, the smell of baked gingerbread, her grandmother singing soft winter songs, snow glittering beneath a full moon, warm hands passing her a mug of cocoa. The quiet, peaceful feeling of being safe and loved. The lantern pulsed with each memory, glowing brighter, warmer, stronger. As the memories deepened, Elin felt tears gather in her eyes. Not of sadness, but of remembering what she had forgotten over the years. That magic is real when the heart is open. That warmth is powerful. That love itself is a form of ancient light. The lantern grew so bright it illuminated the whole clearing. The frost began to melt, slowly at first, then faster, retreating like a shadow fleeing dawn. The silver pine shimmered with renewed life, and when the last bit of frost vanished, the lantern's light settled into a gentle golden glow. Calm, steady, warm. The forest breathed again. The gnomes wiped their eyes discreetly. "Well done," the smallest one sniffed. "Very well done indeed." To celebrate the forest's healing, the gnomes insisted on bringing Elin to their village, a place no human had stepped into for many generations. They led her through a narrow passage between snow-laden firs. Suddenly, the woods opened into a hidden world bursting with light. Dozens, no, hundreds, of tiny homes glowed beneath tree roots and mossy mounds. Golden lanterns hung from branches. Tiny sleighs zipped through the air, pulled by enchanted hares. Elves and gnomes of every shape bustled around, carrying sweets, building snow lanterns, singing soft, melodic songs. It was the festival of winter glow, they explained, an ancient celebration held only when magic was strong. Elin was welcomed with warmth, laughter, and steaming cups of spiced berry tea. Elves braided ribbons into her hair. Gnomes presented her with handmade trinkets, tiny carved stars, polished stones, shimmering charms. The entire village glowed like a dream. Under the shimmering canopy of trees, she sat beside a glowing fire pit as the gnomes told stories of old magic, of winters before human memory, of the bond between forest and people. At one point, the smallest gnome nudged her. "You know," he said softly, "humans forget magic when they grow older, but sometimes it remembers them anyway." Elin smiled, warmed from within. When the celebration drew to an end, the first gnome approached her. "It's time to return," he said gently. "Humans cannot stay in our realm after midnight. Your world will need you in the morning." Elin nodded reluctantly. She didn't want to leave, but she understood. The gnome lifted the lantern, now dimmer, its light more subtle, and placed it quietly in her hands. "You may keep it," he said, "so that when the world feels cold or heavy, you can remember tonight. And remember that magic is never far from those who believe in it." They guided her back to the forest path. The air was calm, the snow deep and unbroken, the night quiet except for soft bells in the distance. At the edge of the village, the gnomes bowed. "Sleep well, friend," they said together, "and Merry Christmas." With one last smile, they slipped back into the forest, disappearing as though swallowed by the shadows. Elin walked home slowly, lantern warm against her chest. And as she reached her door, she noticed the lantern's light shift one last time. Soft, warm, golden, like the glow of childhood Christmas nights. She set it on her windowsill, and the village slept under its gentle glow until dawn. As the story comes to an end, feel the warmth of that magical lantern resting softly in your mind. A reminder of warmth, childhood wonder, and quiet forest magic. Let your breathing slow. Feel your body sinking deeper into comfort, and allow tonight's peacefulness to carry you gently into sleep. The magic of Christmas is still out there, soft, gentle, waiting, and it lives in you, in the warm places of your memory and your heart. Sleep deeply, rest warmly, and may your dreams be filled with glowing lanterns, snowy paths, and kind little gnomes watching over you. Good night.